And then I'm going to give you a moment to take in my, I was going to say my new hair or my hair, but really more like lack thereof. If you are already here or if you're coming back to watch the video later. Yes, I changed my hair and it feels so much better. So we're good. So basically, right now, I'm gonna go ahead and start talking about a summary of the chapter or the beginning of the chapter that we read. It basically, trying to remember where the last chapter ended and where this one began. So it's got like Andrew and Eric. I think they had just watched the thing. Oh, they sit down to eat dinner. And it's weird. It's a weird interaction. They have a bathroom break. So I also thought it was strange that like they untied both Andrew and Eric at the same time, right? So they untie Andrew and Eric at the same time and they let them go to the bathroom and then they they eat dinner. They like sit down. They all eat dinner, the three that are left, which it was really funny. I was actually reading it and I was like, there's I was still thinking for some reason that there were four people when there weren't. But anyway, so the three remaining people who broke into the house, they sit down and eat dinner and they eat with Gwen. And then when they have Andrew and Eric eat, they have Gwen feed them to like kind of be manipulative and such. So um that it's kind of messed up, but we'll talk about more about that in a second. So then once they eat, they kind of settle in to go to sleep. They get the mattresses ready and they put all the blankets down and they get Andrew and Eric ready. I think they give them another bathroom break, which they do separately this time. It's mentioned very briefly, but they did say that they did it separately that time, which I was like, that's smarter. Mm. So, um, they do that. They do a second bathroom break. They they still have them tied to the chair. So there's the Andrew and Eric are still they're gonna sleep tied to the chair. Basically, is what they expect them to do. Honestly, if I was in that position, it's been a long day. Probably would fall asleep in the chair, to be honest. So they keep them in the chair. They put them over by the, I think they said by the door, by the wall, by the door, or something like that. They put them there, and then they say go to sleep, basically. So then um, they're all like trying to go to sleep. The three remaining and Wen are all trying to go to sleep, and Andrew decides that he wants to talk to Eric. And he starts talking to him and he's like reassuring him and telling him like don't believe the stuff they're saying even though it might seem true and all that. And Eric says like of course I don't believe them, of course not, blah blah blah. And then when Eric finally stops talking to him, we realize or we see that Eric actually does believe them a little bit and he feels ashamed and he feels bad for believing them and he also feels a little afraid. So after Andrew and Eric have their interaction, it goes to when where it says it's like one of those character break kind of things. And I felt like maybe in this part it was good to have this character break, but it's the only one so far that I thought was good. Also, we're like a little bit more than halfway done with the book at this point. So that kind of I mean, okay, we'll get more to my critiques later. But anyway, so it goes to Wen's perspective, and she basically has this like thing where she has to sleep with the light on, but in this situation no one left the light on for her, so she tries to sneak out of bed and go and um uh turn on the lamp. There's also some background for her too. She basically always sleeps with the light on, and there have been times when she's gotten angry at her parents for turning the light off in the middle of the night when she was sleeping. But tonight didn't happen. And then while she's trying to do it, Leonard wakes up and tells her that the reason we didn't leave the light on was because your dad, Eric, has a concussion and he's trying to heal. And the best way for him to do that is for there not to be any lights on. So he tells her that. She says he's lying. Well, she thinks he's lying, but she wants to believe it, that that her dad's going to be better when he wakes up and all that. And it then it kind of leads to her questioning him and saying like, why are you doing this? And he says it's because of God, which, dang it, I was really hoping that wouldn't be why. um, I don't know what his perception of God is or whatever. When seems to have sort of a predisposition to dislike people who believe in God, which is like both understandable and kind of sad. But she doesn't like this little boy who talks about God and says his God is a guy and all that. So she kind of, I guess, sort of relates that in her mind to Leonard believing in God, especially with the situation that she's been put in. Um so with all that being said, um so that's basically where we end up. And then they kind of talk about like the next day having to talk about the choice that they have to make and everything, and she asks him to please not, and it's because of God. And she said she can't be his friend and stuff like that. And then forget exactly how it ends, but basically it ends with their interaction. So um now that we've kind of gone over the summary, um basically, and it's weird because like it's a shorter part, and I read it in like a shorter time frame, but I feel like I forgot more of it than I did with the other stuff. I don't know. It feels like pieces are missing, but maybe it's just because it's shorter and I expect there to be more. I don't know what it is. But so the way that happened. Let me kind of go towards certain parts that stuck out to me. I kind of already mentioned a couple of them. But the parts that stuck out to me were like when um when no. But were when they sat down to eat, they just like did it like it was normal and there was no dead body outside and all that. And it's just like, ooh. And I'm pretty sure Adrian actually cooked on the back porch where Redmond's body was. I could be wrong about that too, but she cooked on either the front or back porch. So I was thinking it was a back porch. Um, but anyway, besides that, the meal was just weird. It was like, let's just sit down and have a little family get together meal, sit down and have like a little regular, nothing is wrong, like meal. And honestly, like, doesn't that happen? Um, like in real life sometimes, like some people they have families where it's like there's an issue, but they go about certain things normally, right? It's like even though the world is crumbling down, or like their stuff is crumbling down, like they go about things normally. And there are good things about that, and then there are weird, bad things about that. Like the fact that you could potentially be, I don't remember which one it is, psycho or sociopath. I don't know. But maybe not. I'm not a therapist. I can't diagnose any of that anyway. Anyway, I just thought it was very like Leonard just keeps on keeping on. He's just like, "Oh, well that didn't go well, but maybe tomorrow. Everything's fine, blah blah blah." Okay. Yeah, okay, Leonard, whatever you say. And then Adrian, I still feel like is very matter of fact. She's just like, okay, whatever, like let's just get it done. I'm not happy about it, but we have to do it. So everyone has to do it. And then um Sabrina, she's like kind of like more sensitive to things and caring. I think maybe because of her being a nurse. Um I also thought it was weird how when they were having dinner, Adrian kind of offhandedly said something like, "Oh, it'd be nice to have a beer," and like nobody laughed. First of all, or even like it didn't even say anything about anyone. Like I imagined like kind of dead silence, and she's just laughing at her own joke, like to herself, even though she's really hoping like, yeah, maybe I can have a beer. Maybe she saw the beer in the fridge or something. But Andrew says like, "Yeah, go ahead, have a beer." And she's like, no, it's okay. I'll just stick to water." And then I started wondering about that, right? I started thinking like, why does she want to stick to water? And why does it seem like her little fucked up family that has been created in the last week doesn't agree with the thought of having alcohol, right? So, like, I know in some religions it's like that, but I was trying to think outside the box. So, I was starting to think, like, maybe there's something about staying pure for whatever it is. Oh, I feel like I have to sneeze. Whatever this being is that is making them do this, or um, something. You know what I'm saying? Um, but Leonard's later mention, like, or maybe they're not supposed to be getting inebriated while they're going through this or something like that. Something like a little more like, "Hey, I'm not drinking because of my religion." Which, like, that's fine if you don't drink because of your religion, but I'm thinking in this book, I was trying to think more creatively than that, I guess. More outside the box. But then Leonard's later mentioned about how God is making them do this. That sort of was like, okay, it probably is because of some sort of religious thing that they're that she that she mentioned drinking, and they weren't happy about it, and then she decided not to drink. I feel like now it's probably because of some sort of religious thing. So the dinner definitely was like something that stuck out in my head and all that. Um then they took them to the bathroom, and Andrew's like, "Still being all big and tough," and he's just like, "I'm gonna escape. Next time I'm gonna escape." And I mean, good on Andrew. Like, he's trying to think of ways to like escape and everything. Poor Eric, he's like concussed, and so his mind isn't really working that great. Um, Speaking of that, whenever Eric was like feeling guilty after Andrew talked to him, I felt really bad for him. I was like, "Oh, that's so sad." Like, I mean, I feel like when you're in a stressful situation, you don't act the way you normally would. And not only is Eric in a stressful situation, but he's also concussed. So him possibly believing the things that these people are saying, especially under the tension that is happening and the like trauma that they're causing, or like the situation that they're creating, I feel like it's normal for him to possibly believe his captors, especially with him being concussed. I think that's I don't think he should feel guilty realizing that maybe he's being duped and hopefully trying to be more active to like switch to the other way of thinking where it's like, okay, like, they're just lying to get their way and everything. Then I think now maybe the fact that Andrew has said that, that'll help him. Or it could go the other way and divide Andrew and Eric, because the fact that Andrew mentioned it. And I think Andrew had every good intention. I don't think he was trying to be mean. I think he was just trying to say, I think he was trying to be reassuring, even like, hey, don't be afraid. It's okay. And then also saying, like, hey, I know they're telling us lies, but don't believe them. And this is why they're not true. And if you do believe them, this is why they're not true. There wasn't any I don't think he was being condescending. I don't think he was being patronizing, which are kind of the same thing, but kind of not. Um, I think he was being as positive, as not positive, but like as kind about it while also being upfront. I didn't see Andrew, handling that out of malice. I think he was really trying to do it out of love. Like thinking, okay, Eric might be panicking right now. He's also got a concussion. He might need a little reassurance, and then this is how Andrew gives reassurance. And like I think that Eric is probably, him and Eric are probably used to communicating this way. So I mean, I think, maybe Eric's only reacting that way because he is concussed and the situation is stressful. But I do think it could divide them, which would be very sad. They seem very united right now, and that's really like awesome. And if they start to be divided, that'll be oh, that'll be so sad, especially with them having to make the decision the following day to sacrifice one of them. That'll make me sad if they do, and then I don't know what will happen. I think it would more be like Andrew saying no, like, here, Eric, like, sacrifice me, like, kill me, go ahead, do it. I don't know if one of them can commit suicide and that still counts. I don't know. I think they all have to collectively decide as a family for it to count toward Leonard's rules that he talked about earlier. I have no idea though if one of them commits suicide, if that would help. I have no idea. But I really do think Andrew would be the one to be like, no, it's okay, sacrifice me, and let them go. And Eric would obviously dispute that. He would obviously say no, but then if suicide counts, then Andrew might just, you know, take care of it himself. Um, However, I think it's going to be that that is not going to solve the problem if Andrew says, "Oh well, I'll just do it myself." I think Leonard's going to be like, "No, sorry, doesn't work that way. Can't commit suicide. You guys all have to collectively decide who dies, and then one of you has to kill the other one, or you both have to kill the other one." Kind of like what they did the Redmond, how they all participated. It was basically seeming like something that was already decided beforehand. Like, okay, if we get past the first day and they don't sacrifice one of them, we have to sacrifice one of us. And that's what I'm kind of thinking now. Like maybe there's a day limit. Maybe there's 4 days or 3 days, and they can decide. They'll have a chance to decide each day, and as they each decide each day, like things will get worse and worse. Um, but I don't know. That's just kind of a thought process from how things are going. The first day they failed, they killed Redmond. So maybe the second day, if they fail, they will kill another member of their party. I have no idea. I am along for the ride, just like all you out there. So let me see. Well, I forget which part I was talking about that made me think of all that. Oh yeah, Eric and Andrew, their interaction. Um, so I think the only other part that really kind of stuck out to me, which really didn't much, Leonard and Wen's interaction. They the main thing that that did was for me was just reveal that Leonard is acting on behalf of God. So I don't know. That's kind of disappointing. I wanted it to be something more outlandish than that. Because when I first started reading the book and it's like a homosexual couple who have adopted a child and these button down shirt. I mean, I don't judge anyone by how they look, but if you were going to, you would probably say that these people look like they're right wing conservatives, religious, maybe. And sometimes that means that they're homophobic. So I was like, yeah, that would be an easy answer. And I really hope it's still not that. I really, really hope it's still not that. Like, it's so like crazy for me to think about, like the fact that this couple just going on vacation in the woods could like breaking up their relationship by killing one of them could save the world because of a religious extremist or a couple. Uh, Quadruple or however the fuck you say it, could possibly save the world by killing someone in this relationship. Like, come on. Come on. I don't know. That just the I'm still hoping it's not that. But maybe it's a lost hope at this point because they said God. But I don't know. I don't know. Okay, I don't know. We don't know where the book is gonna take us. It could take us anywhere. Just know that if that is the answer, I'm gonna be disappointed. I do still want to know how it ends. I am curious. However, they could redeem that thought if they make it so Eric, Andrew, and Wynn all live and there's like a good like action sequence where they get rid of Leonard, Sabrina, and Adrian. I will take that. I will take that. That would be a win for me. But I don't know. Okay, so I don't know. Now that it's a religious thing, I'm kind of like that's like I said, disappointing. I mean, honestly, like there are ways to write religious things like creatively. It's just this is such a trope and cliche seeming thing. It just seems kind of, I don't know, underwhelming, I guess. But maybe it'll be redeemed. Maybe the story will catch itself from my disappointment. If you're not disappointed in the story, that's great. I I want to know still how the book ends. Like I'm not gonna stop reading. Um, but I just know that when Leonard said, "Oh, it's because of God," I was like, "Ugh, ugh." But that's just me. Anyway, so now I am going to get to my few critiques. But really, that was mainly the religious thing. Now, and I guess my critique this time today was that I actually enjoyed. I didn't understand the whole Andrew and Eric thing, perspective thing. Maybe they just wanted to. Maybe the author just wanted to like unite them, and say they are united, or maybe he wanted to unite them so that he can break them apart and it'll have more of an emotional impact. I don't know. Um but the when the daughters separation, character separation, the perspective. The daughter's perspective this time did not like upset me. It did a good job, I think, in this chapter. The child language was more present, and also the fact that Andrew and Eric were asleep, that it made sense to have her perspective there. And I thought some of the things that she said were more childlike. She's only 7. I couldn't remember how old she was. I knew she was under 10 last time we talked, but she's only 7. Um, and she had more of that kind of voice this time, like a 7-year-old's voice. I kind of felt like in the earlier chapters and perspective breaks that Wen did not have a child's voice. She had more an adult's voice who maybe hadn't experienced certain things as an adult, if that makes sense. Or maybe just had questions about things they had experienced rather than a child who had not experienced those things and had a child's perspective on those things. Not to say that I know how every child thinks, or not to say that I know how every adult thinks, but it just didn't seem very childlike. Um, like Wen's been through a lot, like they already talked about and everything. She's been through a good amount of stuff. Um, she has lots of experiences under her belt. Just the fact that like she is growing up in as an adopted child, from a different country, like that just by itself, has its impact, I'm sure. And then the the fact that she had a disfigured lip, and she went through that, and um they were open with her about that. I think they didn't want to show her the pictures at first, but then they eventually did, or she found them. Can't remember exactly how that happened, but she's seen the pictures of her as a child, and her parents, they seem to be kind of like I think a lot of parents, especially with their first kid, they seem to be before this like kind of trying to figure out like what to tell her, like, oh, the dead body thing in this chapter. I forgot about that. The dead body thing. So, um Andrew tells her how dead bodies look. And I thought that was really cool because I think it demonstrates that Andrew and Eric both, they question how to raise their child. And it's not just because she's adopted, every parent does that. I've never been a parent, but I know from talking to other parents that they do that. They wonder, and even my own parents, like I'm the oldest, and they were like, oh, well, by the time we got to your youngest sibling, we were like, well, we know what's going to happen, or we know what to do, we know what not to freak out about and all that stuff. It's like once you have a couple of them, you kind of get used to it and all that. That's why the baby is always, or usually is, the one who's like has the most freedom, because parents realize, hey, these are individual humans and they can make their own decisions for a lot of things that we didn't realize before. um so I think that's what they're struggling with When, not necessarily struggling with, just learning about, like, oh, what can we tell her and what can't we tell her, and what should we protect her from and what should we expose her to, and all of that. And I think they both have different approaches to that as well. Like Eric seems to be more reserved about what he shares, and more like, oh, Wen's so like precious and just needs to be protected. And then Andrew is more like, well, you can know what a dead body looks like, I guess. I mean, you're a kid, but that won't hurt you. Just knowing what it looks like. You've never seen one before. So, and then whenever like they were killing Redmond, I think they both told when to look away. So Andrew wasn't like, look when, he was like, don't look when. So obviously Andrew still wants to protect her and keep certain things away from her before she's older. Um, but yeah, I thought that Wen's perspective change was actually really well done this time. I appreciated it. I appreciated the language used more than in the other chapters, the perspective breaks. I didn't really have any complaints about it this time. There was some parts where I was like, it's weird that the author phrased it that way, or that the author said that. Like, okay, so through the whole book, there's been times when I've thought, oh, they didn't describe that much, or Oh, they're describing this a lot. And like maybe like those things that they've described a lot haven't really played an important role yet. And then the things that they haven't described very much, like sometimes they'll refer back to it and I'll be like, hmm. Or it'll stick out to me like it's a big deal. Like I'll be like, oh, wait, what? That's what they think about that? I can't think of something off the top of my head right now. I really should start taking notes for these things. Since I can't really use the book, I don't want to quote it exactly on YouTube because I feel like that would be copyright infringement. But yeah, so that was my thoughts on chapter 3, part 1, or chapter 4, part 1. Um, Now I said this was part 3, but I don't remember if it's part 3 or part 4. I think it's, I can't remember. I'll have to check and retitle it. If it's titled incorrectly, I'm sorry. But anyway, so so this is the middle of chapter 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to read to the end of this. I think it's this chapter and this part. So we're going to read to the beginning of the next part, which is so stop before you get to bloody like the day you were born. That's the beginning of the next part. And it'll be talked about next Sunday at 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I think that's everything for today. If you guys have any other thoughts or questions, go ahead and drop them in the comments below. And I hope you guys have a great week. Have fun reading. This is Steaming Rainbow, and I am out. Bye.